Go ahead, please.
All set.
Great, thank you. So let me kick us off now. Thank you all for joining. My name is Gawain Kripke. I'm co-chair with Commissioner Littauer of the ANC3C Community Engagement and Grants Committee. This committee meets to discuss issues of relevance to the community. In particular, we focus on grant applications from community organizations. This committee doesn't make decisions. Only the full ANC does make final decisions, but it's a chance for the commission members and the community to learn more about the projects and to give opinions and have discussion around it. So we won't make a decision in this meeting, but we will hopefully fully explore the grant proposals and the issues involved. It doesn't need to be super formal. If no one objects, I'll chair it. We're going to have presentations from the applicants. I think we'll deal with them sequentially. Sorry to make people wait, but I think we'll deal with the application from Woodley House first, and then secondly the application from the DC Preservation League. So if everyone's okay with that, we'll go right into the Woodley House grant. We have with us Dan Schiff from Woodley House, and I think Dan is able to make a presentation. Dan, is that right?
Yep, I do have slides. I'm
Great.
ready whenever you give me the go-ahead.
I think we're going to try to do that.
I made you the co-host, so the share button should appear now at the bottom.
I do see it. Thank you, Janelle.
Super.
Shall I go ahead?
Please.
Okay. I'll start sharing my screen if I can.
Coming up.
Is this coming through?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is a kind of a general overview of our food pantry because, as I think everyone knows, we've submitted one grant application that for the pantry that was declined, and then we submitted another one. So I can talk about both, but we'll talk kind of generally about the Woodley House Food Pantry. I'm also joined by my colleague Cheryl Kennerly, who's here on the call, and she is really the go-to person for all things related to the food pantry. So she may be a better position to answer some of your questions than I am. But just want to say thank you to Gawain and Janelle and everyone else from ANC3C. Good to be here. I'll start just an overview of our food pantry. There we go. So just for some background, the Woodley House Food Pantry was founded in 2011. For those who don't know Woodley House, we've been in DC and specifically in Woodley Park since 1958, so almost 70 years. The food pantry's been around for the last 14 of those years. It was initially created to support some participants in our supported independent living program. Those are individuals who are living on their own, but with ongoing case management services. A lot of them are really income constrained, so the food pantry was designed to help them with some additional food in their lives. We also carry household supplies, personal care items, things like that. These days, it's open to all DC residents. Anyone with an ID or proof of residency can come shop at our food pantry, which is open every week. It's every Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 2:30. We know it's a very narrow window when it's open, but we do have really limited resources and staff to staff the food pantry. So you'll see Cheryl on the picture on the right, Cheryl and Betty, who are two of the team members who are most involved with the food pantry. And then we had on the left, we had Councilmember Fruman visit the food pantry earlier this year. So like I said, the pantry does a lot to support Woodley House residents. These are individuals who are with diagnosed mental health disorders. Some of them have lived in our group homes for many years. Some of them are in more transitional situations. We do have multiple programs in Woodley Park, including our Valenti House group home, which has been there since 1958. Just up the block, we have another home called Crossing Place. We have participants in our permanent supportive housing program further down on Connecticut Avenue. And then we also have our administrative office across from the zoo. So we are really well positioned in Woodley Park. So we have clients come from the neighborhood to shop at the pantry, and we estimate that 80% of the patrons who come to the pantry are within walking distance. The photo on the left, two of our supported independent living participants who are volunteers in the pantry, they receive a small financial stipend, but for years they've been helping us out of the pantry with receiving items, stocking the shelves, and we're really grateful for their support. We couldn't do the pantry without them. Community donations is something we're always requesting year-round. We always need food, toiletries, other household goods from the community, but unfortunately, donations come pretty infrequently. We do have some repeat donors who have been really generous. Food Rescue helps connect us with grocery stores and restaurants to bring in food that's not yet expired but is still good to go out. All Souls Church, which is just half a block from us, has been really generous. They do an ongoing drive of food and other items for the pantry. The Cleveland Park Community Garden, just up in Cleveland Park, has been great during the last two growing seasons, donating some fresh produce, greens, tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, things like that. Really popular to give out at the pantry. And then some of the neighborhood apartment buildings have been very generous too in doing drives, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. We're seeing just skyrocketing demand for the pantry, especially in the last few months. Over the last 3 years, it's been up. You'll see between 2023 and 2024, the number of unique patrons didn't really increase, but the number of orders went up significantly, which means that people were coming just more frequently. And then this year, the first half of 2025, the numbers have just skyrocketed. 81 patrons already in the first 6 months of the year, and we're already above 500 orders. We're going to clear 1,000 orders this year, which is really unprecedented demand for our small pantry. We expect, or we believe that the increase in demand came with the expiration of the pandemic SNAP benefits about 3 years ago. And then you pair that with the really dramatic price inflation of the past few years, and it's no wonder that people are really hurting and trying to find as many sources of food as they can. We're currently seeing about 25 visitors every Tuesday, and that's up from only about 10 to 15 every week. That was just a few months ago. So the demand in just the last few months has really gone up a lot. And one of the reasons we applied for this grant is we're looking for ways to enable our pantry to grow. This fiscal year, we've got a budget of about $22,000 for the pantry. That's largely to cover the food costs, as well as a little bit of staff time and some other utilities and things like that. But the pantry expenses are up 37% so far this year. That's both because we're buying more food and because the food is more expensive than it has been the last couple of years. So we would love to have more funding to purchase more items to keep our shelves filled. But if purchasing food is not going to be feasible, we're also looking to upgrade the pantry space, put on a new coat of paint, put some new shelving in to make it a more welcoming space. And then the cold storage is another really critical need for us. You'll see our freezer there that Cheryl's opening there. It's working fine, but it's really limited space. We get turkeys donated for Thanksgiving, and it's just not enough space to store all the turkeys that we get and to give out to the community. The fridge we have for the pantry is kind of on its last legs. We would love to replace it with a new commercial fridge/freezer. And then the HVAC down in that space is not working as well as we would like. So the temperature is pretty inconsistent, and we need a much more comfortable, stable temperature to be able to store the food that we have. So those are just some of the ways we're looking to upgrade the pantry space. And I want to say thank you again to the ANC and to OANC for the consideration. We're happy to take any questions.
Oh, great, Dan. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think at this point, the best thing to do would be to open it to questions from the participants in the meeting. But I do want to ask Denise from OANC to make some comments and to maybe give some advice on the application. Denise, you want to go ahead, or should we just have some questions and answers first?
I noted, I just saw the revised application, and I noticed they revised it in line with the OAG opinion I sent them. So that's good. And so the OANC will revise its memo. the one thing I would note is the freezer and refrigerator based on the OAG structure would be permissible, but not improvements to the HVAC system. Normally, things that are purchased that belong to an organization are not permissible. But for food banks, the OAG carved out what we're viewing as an exception in the sense that it's storing the food, it's storing things that are of benefit to everyone, and it's of a long-term nature. So but I assume the refrigerator or the commercial storage unit alone will be about $5,000, at least based on my previous job where we had commercial kitchens.
Denise, sorry to interrupt, but there was an attached budget spreadsheet.
Well, I didn't see the grant application until after the meeting started, so.
It doesn't include the HVAC, it specifically. So just to save some time.
Okay, so
yeah, follow the rules. Dan is good.
Yeah, well, so I think that since the revision is in line with the OAG opinion, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be changing our position.
That's great. Of course, so thank you, Denise, for that, and we'll look for a formal review at some point in the near future. But we won't. Our ANC doesn't meet again until September, so we have a little bit of time before this is finalized. But appreciate your review and reviewing and for Woodley House for revising their application to make it more compliant with our rules. Are there other questions that people have? I have one, which is, could you say something about how clients find out about the pantry, and is that a factor in your increasing usage? Are more people finding out about it?
I can address
Cheryl,
that.
please.
Yeah, this is Cheryl. Our food pantry is listed on the Capital Area Food Bank's website. We're also listed as a referral source through it's called Find Help, which is an internet-based online referral system that people can go in and just search around their zip code. We also work with a lot of other community service providers in the city that refer people to us. I would say probably most frequently I get referrals through the findhelp.org. It used to be called Aunt Bertha, but they've changed the name and it's called findhelp.org. So it's actually nationwide. You can put your zip code in and tell it exactly what you're looking for, and you get referrals through that. And then we also, like I said, we work with a lot of other a lot of other service providers that refer people to us. And then we have a lot of word of mouth. We are very small, but we're a very neighborhood friendly food pantry. There's one that's up on Connecticut Avenue farther that is open on Sundays. That's very large. I think they serve like 200 people on Sundays when they're open. But we're a much smaller, and I like to think of us as a neighborhood friendly environment, and people are comfortable coming to
if you don't mind me interjecting, the Department of Health, and it's brand spanking new, like a couple months old, has created an app for services, all kinds of services around the city. And I can send the ANC and Woodley House the links, because you can, one of the things an ANC commissioner can do is add resources to the app. And the idea was that the ANC commissioners would be using it if they're presented with anything from housing to food to mental health services, that they would have an app that they could access.
That'd be great.
As well as other service providers. So it's new, but it's pretty exhaustive. And
we also do a lot of featuring the food pantry on our social media and information is available on our website. So we definitely like, however we can. I appreciate you sending me that, or Dan, that information, because we do want to do outreach as widely as we possibly can.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. And thanks for that heads up about the app, Denise. Just another point, since Cheryl mentioned Capital Area Food Bank, even though we're featured on the website, we don't actually get any food from Capital Area Food Bank. We're too small for them. We have in the past, but it became infeasible. So
Yeah, that was
unfortunately,
pre-pandemic.
yeah, we don't have that that regular, consistent source of food that they would otherwise provide.
Thanks. Other questions or comments from the audience? I see. Just raise your hand or say something. I have Janelle and then Samuel and anybody else who wants to come in.
Yeah, I was just hoping Denise could provide some more clarity as to the aforementioned food bank up the street in Van Ness was the one that we funded using ANC grant money in 2020.
Yeah, in 2020,
and then-
2020, there was that you were under the pandemic law, which released the restrictions on ANCs and what they could spend their money on, which included food. And the law, there's been changes to the law since as of last summer, and then with some opinions on the whole food thing, the whole food policies have changed. But in 2020, it lasted a year, probably closer to 13 months between the emergency and the temporaries. There was a release of all restrictions on ANC expenditures. So ANCs were permitted to buy personal hygiene, clothing, and direct food, allowed to fund direct food, mutual aid services. And that law expired, that relaxation of the law expired.
Right. And then council recently went and changed some of the language, which was in your correspondence to me after I'd posted an item on 3C's regular agenda about making more clarifications to the law for council to put into budget season thoughts this year. And you told me that that change was already made and that OANC agreed with OAG and weren't enforcing restrictions on food.
No, not exactly. If what I said is certain food expenditures would be allowed so long as the grants followed the other requirements. With Woodley House, there was no project. And so a grant still has to not only be a permissible expenditure, but it has to be for a project, not duplicate DC government services and have the community benefit requirements under the newer law. So the issue I had with the Woodley House, the biggest issue we had with the Woodley House is because it was not project based. It was a general operating grant. And that, even with the OAG has not changed their position on it because of what the statutory language is that grants can't be for the general operating expenses of an organization. And the other issue is with food banks, there's some issues around the substantial benefit to the community. And so with the food expenditure itself. So there are certain circumstances where food is allowed, which I believe the director sent you the policies on grants with a food-based component. But if you want to be able to directly fund mutual aid, that would require either a clarification in the law or would require, a change in the statute.
Yeah, that's what I was aiming to have happen until I was told that it was not going to be enforced anymore. And then I backed off because I don't like to do extra work.
Well, they wouldn't have done it in the budget.
Well, But
Support
it was still kind of like, this was the moment in time that I was making requests to council for things that.
Right,
when
but there will be as I understand it, Robert White may be working on some other legislation, his committee staff. So, you know, our instructions were in terms of what they were going to be working on, and this also came from the chair, is that any changes in the law within the Budget Support Act had to be related to the budget or directly to, and so at that point, that sort of language would, at least my understanding is they weren't willing to consider it. But there's going to be a second legislative package, although right now, I mean, they haven't even finished the budget until they get through the stadium. So that'll be things that I believe the White's committee will be working on in September.
Well, all that set aside, based on Dan's presentation and the information provided within, there's clearly an increased need within this community that live within 80% of walking distance of this location. The project is, there's an increase in demand that demand should be met by this grant. And I'm happy to write that up and go to the full commission and get the ANC to support it. And if you guys want to ding us for it, sure. But there's clearly a need in the community, and the money is not doing any good to any of those people in our bank account. And I will speak to my colleagues on the commission, and Bob Ward has hand up, a member of the community, and I'm pretty sure everybody's going to be in agreement that we'd rather not have hungry people.
Well, that is your choice. I mean, the ANC makes the ultimate decision on how to fund and not fund. I mean, but if it's spent on, which is what happened to 4B last fall, is they funded a mutual aid grant, and that money was withheld from future allotments. But each ANC can make that decision based on the knowledge in front of them. It's not like the only thing our office can do is withhold from a future allotment. If you choose to spend the money and take that risk, that's entirely up to you. And I know some of the ANCs have over $100,000 in their bank accounts. I don't know what yours is, but yeah, so those are choices they're making.
Okay, thanks. Samuel, I think you're next.
Also, we don't act, I was going to say, and you use the language, at least one of the emails used the language, we don't approve grants. We just review them to see if they meet the fiscal guidelines. The ultimate approval is the ANC.
Thanks. I think Samuel's next, and then I have Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Gawain. And I just want to express my gratitude to Dan and Cheryl for their good work here in Woodley Park. Dan, we've talked before, and I'm just a big fan of what Woodley House has had to accomplish for the betterment of our neighbors, and really appreciative of this service that you provide to so many. My question, any question that I have about Woodley House pales in comparison to my concern if Woodley House were not able to operate with full resourcing. That is my #1 priority, making sure that, Woodley House's operations are able to flourish and expand. My other question is about the process. I'm a new commissioner on the ANC, so this is for Denise. You had mentioned that, over the course of the pandemic, there was for lack of a better word, the restrictions were lifted to accommodate for more immediate mutual aid needs. My follow-up question is, was there an inciting incident, following that opening that required new restrictions to be put in place?
No, it was only passed.
Good faith?
It was only passed as emergency legislation that was renewed a couple times. And there may have been a temporary in there, but emergency legislation is only good for 90 days and temporary is only good for 6 months. There was never a permanent piece of legislation introduced, so it was simply allowed to expire.
I completely understand that in terms of process. If For me, I'm primarily
I
concerned
wasn't
about
around,
outcomes.
so I'm not sure how the
I wasn't
I
about
wasn't around,
outcomes.
so I'm not sure how the decision was made to allow it to expire at the time. I know that they renewed, the original bill had everything from allowing ANCs to meet remotely to relaxations, and obviously the remote part became permanent legislation, but it almost took, well, it only became permanent last summer, so it took them a while to even do that. They just kept renewing the temporaries.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the updated guidance. I join my colleagues in hoping that we can work alongside the OANC to reform the process so that we can, expand and keep supporting these services without fear of reprimand, that we may not receive that same allotment the following year. So thanks again for joining, and thanks again to Dan and Cheryl for their presentation and their continued work. I'll turn it over to Bob, if that's all right.
Thank you. I had a question. In noticing the meeting, there was a bunch of documents that were shared, and I think I read somewhere, and looking to just clarify that the inability to purchase food was something that there was a carve out, and that the exclusion only remained with buying food for meetings or something like that. But you could buy food, and I guess what I'm wondering is, I guess to the point Janelle was raising earlier, that if it needs to be a project, there seems to be a change in circumstances that they need to fill a gap in their food purchases between now and the holiday season, when donations will pick up again. Is that not a project, and would food not be able to be purchased for that project?
First, the $100 you're quoting is for ANCs directly expending money. The grants are on, which is in the DC code. The grant section is different. But no, it's not a project if it's their normal operating expenses. Even if an organization does, which Woodley House I've known about for most of the time I've been in DC, does great work, but to tide somebody over in their normal expenses is not a project. The Thanksgiving season often involves projects, a special project just for Thanksgiving, that it has a beginning and an end.
So you could buy turkeys?
Well, we haven't been faced with that question yet. And when we approach
operating expenses like salary and utilities and stuff,
well, they also, if they're functioning as a food bank, getting food is part of their operation.
But so is having a refrigerator.
That, as I said, is a carve out that the OAG made.
And
it's not necessarily, it's not one our office actually necessarily agrees with, but that's what it is. So that's what we.
If there's a question mark over whether or not you could buy turkeys for Thanksgiving, but you can't buy food to fill a gap in
up to this point
in the summer, that really is a policy that has no real legs.
Well, up to this point, no, nobody has purchased food. And what they've done at the Thanksgiving food drives is they've bought. There's a large citywide program that provides Thanksgiving and holiday meals, and I'm trying to think of their name, because they actually in their applications enumerate how many people within each ANC they intend to serve, and they use that money to rent trucks. They use that money to rent equipment that they need to. I think to buy boxes and things that they need for the project. To date, we've not had a project-based food request. Well, we have, in the sense that have been some cookouts and things where moderate amounts of food were bought. And that we went to the council member Bonds and talked to her because she's the one that was involved with the change of the law, and asked, what was your intent when you did this? Because it's not in the committee report.
Okay, thanks. It's a bit of a sore point, and also there's enough ambiguity that I can see why people keep coming back to it. Cheryl, did you want to come back in, and then I have Adam, and then any last questions or comments, and then we'll move on.
Well, Dan and you and I had talked, the refrigerator that we're talking about, a commercial type refrigerator, is part of a project that we're wanting to look at rearranging how people come in and receive the orders and their requests from the food pantry. Right now, the way that it works, and this is post-pandemic, we started this in the pandemic, but we meet them at the back door. We give them a quick rundown of some of the variety of things that we have to offer that day. And we take their bag, we come in, we fill it with a standard inventory with, you know, what we have to provide for the day, and we bring it back to them. This refrigerator that we're looking at is going to allow us to set it up so that they can come into the food pantry and shop for what they want, and we'll be able to carry more items like refrigerated type items that they can select themselves. So, if it helps a little bit with the project definition, I'm not real sure how you're defining project, but there is a project that we're looking to improve how people experience their visit to the food pantry by allowing them to pick, what they need, what they want from the shelves, as opposed to getting a standard, what we make available. So if they don't want a can of peas and they would rather have cans of corn, or if they want peanut butter but not pasta sauce, or it allows them the, I'd say, dignity and the ability to be more selective about what we provide from the food pantry, and not just a standard bag of food that we give. So it is project based in that we're wanting to put in this refrigerator and reconfigure our space to accommodate this new flow of people coming into the food pantry that we've not been able to do since pre-pandemic. If that helps the definition of project at all.
Yeah, I've been there. It is tiny, and I know that everybody tries to do their best to dignity and respect, especially in COVID. You guys bent over backwards to really make something that I was like, how does this work? And I really appreciated it. And I know that you guys brought in some volunteers from Deloitte and stuff to also help streamline operations, where these were volunteers that it was amazing to
the Compass folks.
Yeah. So I mean, just well done, and I would be happy if the ANC was able to support the improvements.
Great. Adam, do you want to come in? Adam?
Oh, we can't hear you, but you're not on mute, so I don't know what's happening.
Now you are muted. Adam, you look muted. Now you look unmuted, but I still can't hear you. No luck.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Finally.
Yes.
Sorry, I got a new computer. I just have a couple comments that I would like to make, and then I will be done. So I want to thank Dan and Cheryl for their work. I think they do incredible work here in Woodley Park and in the greater Ward 3 area as well. I am all for if Janelle would like to put her letter back on an ANC agenda and vote on it, because I do think there is a need now in the DC area, given what is going on at the federal level, to possibly revisit this, because the ANC has $120,000 in the checking account, and it's not doing me any good there, and it's not doing anybody good and not doing anybody good in there anyway. And I do think that, like COVID, the layoffs that we're seeing at the federal government level right now is a crisis that we're going to have to address whether we want to or not. And Denise, I do want to just go to, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I have studied political science my entire life, and to go to a council member and ask them what their intent was, I don't think that counts. I mean, there was the whole issue with Kenya McDuffie when he was running for attorney general, and the intent was not to allow council members to run, but the law was clear that you had to be a practicing lawyer for the
No, I agree with you on that. Partly the reason we went to her was because we were in conflict with the OAG, and we wanted to see if the OAG's interpretation was asking her has no legal significance at all.
Okay. I thought, sorry, I was mishearing.
I misspoke, but we didn't just sit and look at the law, and we're trying to go to the source documents, which are not, in this case, very reliable. So we went back to talk to her, but no, you're right. It has absolutely no legal significance whatsoever, unless it was in the committee report. And even then, that's a tertiary source.
Okay.
So
makes sense then. But then going back to my other point, then I do think we as an ANC should vote on that letter and send it to Councilmember White and see if we can push for a change in the law, because I do think, you know, it's coming. I don't think it would replicate a city service. I don't think there is a city service that gives food pantries food. I could be wrong, but the DC government is very large. But I do think that it's going to be a need, especially as we enter the next fiscal cycle, when we've cut a lot of social services and safety nets in the regular city budget. I think it's going to be a need that the ANCs might be looked upon to help rectify. And I just, I understand that it was a temporary law and an emergency law that council let lapse, but I think, we thought we were coming out of it, and we were coming out of it, and one election and we're right back in it. So I do think, maybe we should be pushing to change the law. At least, starting temporarily, but maybe permanently would be even better.
Okay.
That's all.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, any last comments or questions here for Dan and Cheryl and Woodley House on their application? Okay, thanks. I think we sort of have a way forward on this. I think we're going to wait for Denise to give us the final review, but I think we're in pretty good shape on this one. So if everybody's cool with that, I'd like to move to the next application from DC Preservation League. Rebecca, I think, is here for that. Rebecca? Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Rebecca Miller. I'm the director of the DC Preservation League. I'm joined by DCPL's development director, Kelly Knotts. So if you have any questions for her, she's also available as well. I do have a PowerPoint, if I could share my screen.
Give me 1 second. Rebecca, are you sharing or is Kelly?
I would be sharing.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna make you a co-host. And now you should see the green share button there.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, so hopefully you can see that now.
Coming up.
Yep, there you
There
go.
it is.
Perfect, perfect. So as I said, my name is Rebecca Miller. I'm with the DC Preservation League. Have been with the organization since 2003. DCPL, for those of you who don't know, was started as Don't Tear It Down to save the old post office building on Pennsylvania Avenue. We are the only citywide nonprofit solely dedicated to the preservation of historic buildings in the District of Columbia. In addition to saving the old post office, we've saved other buildings like the Franklin School, the Willard Hotel, and we are also responsible for the DC Historic Preservation Law, which was enacted in 1978 and went into effect in 1979. It was really precipitated by the demolition of the McGill building, which was a building that's right across the street from where the MLK library is at this point. So there's a new glass building there. Was a subsequent building before that, but it was a parking lot for a number of reasons. But this happened to be an over-the-counter demolition permit that at the time, the regulatory agency signed off on over the counter. So that's what really triggered the movement for a preservation law that would, gain that time in order to have more discussion about historic preservation before buildings came downtown, especially with the decline in population at that point. We also do tours across the city. We have free educational events, other paid. We're a membership organization as well. And just kind of preservation by the numbers in DC. This is from the 2025 preservation plan that's put together by the DC Historic Preservation Office. There are 70 historic districts, 756 landmarks, 43,000 historic property owners, and this includes condos. Protected properties, 28,000, and the city is about 20% protected. On average, a new housing unit production that's delivered each year is 18%. So it tends to range between 17.5% and 19.5%, but on average, so it's about 18. And those numbers are from the DC Economic Partnership. So we have now embarked on a DC Historic Preservation Impact Study, which is what I'm here to talk to you all about tonight. And this is based on actually a resolution that was passed by 3C in 2023, I believe, looking to understand better the racial equity of the historic preservation program. And so, this kind of lays it out here about how historic preservation supporters argue that DC's program strengthens communities and contributes to small business incubation, affordable housing, neighborhood stabilization. And then there are the counter argument that historic preservation can be exclusionary and encourage displacement of BIPOC communities and inflate housing costs. So we met with the DC Historic Preservation Office and the Office of Planning and determined that a study was necessary in order to look at this. As I mentioned before, we have an almost 50-year-old historic landmark and historic district protection law. And there have been efforts over the years to make changes to it. But one of the things that I said to the council chair this year in our oversight was this study would then give us the opportunity to take a comprehensive look at that law as well as we're coming on the 50th anniversary of it so that we can understand better what changes may or may not need to be made. This is to give you an overview of what the roles of our partnership are between DCPL and the Office of Planning. DCPL is responsible for paying for the study and raising funds for the study. We have contracted the qualified consultant for this. We manage the contract with the consultant, and we have rights to publish this as needed. And we coordinate with the DC Historic Preservation Office and the Office of Planning to gather the input necessary. While that is one of our roles, the Historic Preservation Office who is their grant administrator, has been doing all of the communications with the DC's sister agencies. So DOB, also tax and revenue, appraiser's office, all of those to gather that information and pass it on to the consultant. So we have not been responsible for that part of it. OP is also providing technical assistance with their data analytics team to question the methodology of the consultants, the project, and consult regularly on this particular project. So there's a lot of hands involved from the Office of Planning. Here's a bit about the study scope, and it's going to be presented in 8 different sections, which each section is delivered as a standalone document, but will be combined as one full document at the end. One of the things DCPL also committed to was having this presented to the DC Council as part of a public forum so that council members could ask questions of the consultants and there could be testimony from the public as well. So section 1, which is the basics, is really kind of an overview of the National Register districts, population, by race compared to the city overall, compared to the ward overall, land area share of historic districts in these particular areas. Each neighborhood district is looked at. I know that there has been some confusion that we were only looking at 5 specific neighborhoods, which I'll talk about later what that is. But this document is looking at all 70 historic districts. So each neighborhood district, the population compared with the ward overall by race, land area, density. There will be maps included in this to show the neighborhood districts and the wards and the individual landmarks, but those won't be included in a lot of the study areas. Change over time. And this particular section is about population growth rate, racial distribution, and property value. And this information is compared within the historic district to the ward as a whole and as the city as a whole. The next section 3, neighborhood diversity, which is a mirror metric and economic integration metric for the city as a whole. This will also be done on a ward level and also on a historic district level. And this is information such as census data. And the beginning of this study period is 1990. And that date was selected because it was explained to us by professionals that that is the date where the data becomes much more usable, so to speak, and much more consistent. It's harder to, from my understanding, really kind of go through the data that is much further back, which could take a tremendous amount of time. And the Office of Planning was insistent that this document be completed by December of this year. Moving on to the economic measures, we'll be looking at the change in property values over time, property tax generation increments since 2010, building permits, the numbers and the amount. One interesting discussion that we've had is the notion of denials versus approvals. And one of the things in the city is that they don't necessarily track denials. They have hold for comment, which they have throughout the DOB agency, and which includes historic preservation. So looking at the numbers that are held for comment and in comparison to not just historic preservation, but the other disciplines as well. Tax credit investment in these neighborhoods, housing units created in each neighborhood district, and the current pattern of small businesses, so startups, women-owned business, minority-owned businesses will also all be studied as well. We've also asked for them to provide lessons learned from other cities on their racial equity approaches. Other cities like LA, New York, Chicago, San Antonio have done racial equity studies. And so we'd like to have an understanding of what they've learned from those studies and the patterns there and kind of best practices moving forward. And then we'll also have these 5 case studies, which is one of the reasons that we're here to see you all today. And these case studies that are listed below, Mount Pleasant, Cleveland Park, Bloomingdale, Kingman Park, and Anacostia, were selected to reflect the diversity and demographic, building stock, location, and date of designation. So these case studies are just to do a more in-depth analysis that has been determined by the Office of Planning necessary in order to have more comprehensive data on these particular areas. And there will also be focus groups that will be done in these particular neighborhoods so that where these case studies are being held so that they can reflect what individuals within the districts, their perception of historic preservation, what their concerns are, how they think it limits them or how they believe it protects them. So looking for that information. And the interview questions will be put forward that the consultant will be put to the Office of Planning for approval in that capacity. These are our consultants, Place Economics, which is a private sector firm. They're internationally known for their work in these types of studies and economic analysis about historic preservation. They have contracted with Brick and Story, which is a local urban consultancy here in DC, who will be doing the racial equity portion of this study. And and Brick and Story is actually contracted with the Office of Planning under for the comprehensive plan, which was unknown to all of us before our first meeting with Director Cozart. So just some images of historic buildings, and that's us if you'd like to contact us outside of this meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, great. Thank you for that presentation and for the application and for coming tonight. I'm going to just take questions as they come. I have Adam up first.
Yeah, so I have a couple questions and then just a generic statement. So my first question is, you say that you retain the right, but not the exclusivity to publish this report. Are you committed to publishing this report, even if the responses or what it shows is not exactly what you thought it was going to show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're committed to putting the report forward. It was made clear to us at the beginning by the consultant that the information that's provided may not be what we hope it will be or think it will be. And that's a commitment that we've made to make it public.
And then my other question is, how did you come up with the 5 neighborhoods? Because I find it a little interesting that you so happen to have chose Kingman Park as it's now undergoing a massive possible redevelopment.
I'm not familiar with the hospital redevelopment at Kingman Park, and those neighborhoods were selected by the Office of Planning.
Redevelopment, because it's RFK.
Oh, RFK, I'm sorry. I thought you said hospital. I apologize. No, the Office of Planning selected those neighborhoods.
Okay. So I just am going to make a generic statement, and then it's not my meeting, so the other commissioners can jump in. For one, I do love historic preservation. My parents met at Macy's Herald Square in New York, and when they were working there, and worked in many different historic department stores in New York throughout my time. So I guess you could say I'm a child of historic preservation. I, for one, find that this grant is very similar to a grant that we approved last cycle and was ultimately unable to be funded. So for that reason, I don't see a major difference, and I can't support this. I think the idea is great, and I think, it was something that the ANC was trying to push with both the last grant that we approved and the resolution that we voted on. But if I feel like we can't say yes to one and no to the other, and I just feel like they were too similar in nature, except for maybe like, oh, the undesigned, the red line was Ward 3 specific and not neighborhood specific. But in my opinion, I live in Woodley Park. I'm in Cleveland Park all day, every day. I'm in Van Ness all day, every day. To me, I live in Ward 3. I don't necessarily live in Woodley Park. I'm in Chinatown more often than I would care to admit. So I for that reason, I personally can't support this, because I just think what's fair is fair, and to give this to one group and not the other, even though in my opinion it's similar, it's not how I just feel. Good. That was bad English, but I'm sorry.
Thanks. More questions. I see Bob. Bob with his hand up. Bob, do you want to go ahead? Not here. Bob, you're on mute.
Thank you. I just want to say I think it's a really important topic. I think it's something that I've advocated for, both in front of ANC3C. I've written about it at Greater Washington. I think it's a hugely important study. And I have, I guess the big problem I have with this is that the Office of Planning has turned to vested interest parties to conduct what should be a really objective study, which is a really bad practice. It's a bad practice that OP is not paying for this themselves, that they couldn't come up with the $89,000 to pay for this study. But that it appears it was sole sourced and there wasn't a conversation about how do we bring together analysts and funders that represent a wide variety of points of view to put together an objective study. I have questions about the actual study and the methodology, but my comments don't even get there. I think this is to have the DC Preservation League, and I'm sure Place Economics is a capable firm, but they are advocates. I mean, if you go to their website and you look at every one of their studies and their mission statement, it's about how do we use data to defend historic preservation. You don't need an expert in historic preservation to do this study. In fact, you shouldn't have an expert in historic preservation to do this study. You should have an analyst in urban economics, in GIS systems, in other things to do this. To have a point of view going into this from the analyst's perspective, it sends the wrong message, and you may come up with the absolute best study in the world. It's still going to be clouded by the fact that who did it and what was missing and what wasn't looked at. And it's the wrong way to do a study. And so while I think this study absolutely needs to happen, this isn't the way to do it. And I hope ANC would not fund this.
Rebecca, can I give you a chance to respond if you want to? You don't have to. We have a queue of other speakers.
It's unnecessary. I mean, I've read his perspective in Greater Washington, and I fully expect that your ANC is not going to fund this. So we just came tonight to explain it, and answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. I think I had Samuel next. Samuel, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, I'll actually yield to either Swale or Janelle for a moment while I absorb the most recent comments. Thanks.
Okay. Janelle, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I have a question about, was this in fact a sole source situation, or were multiple bids? Like, I'm asking you to clear up any of the record there on that bit.
There's no record to clear up. Yes, we hired Place Economics. There's not firms that do this type of work. Yes.
Okay.
Our contract with HPO began in February of this year. So to put together a large team to have something completed by December wasn't going to be within that capability. A firm that could complete this type of study with the knowledge that they're having. Now, the information that they're getting to analyze is information that's coming from the city themselves. So the notion that they've already cooked the books, or we cooked the books, it's frankly just insulting. So.
Well, another along that thread of question is, did HPO sole source this task to you, giving district resources to your project?
There are zero financial resources.
There's FTEs attached to pulling this data for this project that are coming from HPO, that there needs to be a thread to a line item in budget approved by council for doing things like this. So can you point to where that was in FY 25's budget that allows for HPO OP to provide FTEs to pull data to first question is, was this sole source to your organization? Second question is, was there money in the budget somewhere that allowed for this? And if not, was there there wouldn't have been reprogramming because it's not hitting the threshold, or maybe it is because there's no line item. I'm pretty sure is going to be your answer, but I'll let you answer it.
There's not a specific line item for this particular project. There's preservation planning in the budget. There's also general planning in the budget. So where that falls would be a better question for the Office of Planning Director or David Maloney, the SHPO. So.
Is there a contract document between you, OP, HPO, defining the scope and the deliverables?
Yes.
that
mhm.
we can get?
Yes.
Okay,
There is a cooperative agreement, and the information that was on the screen previously is what it lays out, who's responsible for what.
I think we'd like to see that document in full.
That's fine.
Cool.
Okay, Rebecca, thank you for being responsive here, and I appreciate you showing up for this. I think I had Swale next.
Yeah, thank you. I know that other speakers didn't make comments about the methodology, but I will. I just can't let this go. I think any studies that are done based on when data is available are clearly meant to be biased studies. If you only have data after 1991, there's no way you can look at before or after, at least like, for example, the Cleveland Park Historic District, which was established way before 1991. So just saying that we only have data for 91, hence we're only going to look at analysis past 1991, that'll clearly bias the analysis because you won't be able to see what happened before or after any historic district. So I think the study is flawed in that way. I also just want to point out there's a whole historic preservation research group at the University of Maryland, College Park. It's not like people can't do this. They actually have done a full-on review paper on the impact of historic preservation on communities and on racial bias and on racial demographic makeup. So I encourage them to look at that. So you don't need to go to place economics. You actually have unbiased university researchers right up the street that you could have hired. And I guess the other thing I wanted to ask, this is really for Miss Denise Victor, is if Mr. Kent Bosey was involved at all, like has he commented on this at all, on this study or
No.
this application?
No,
He hasn't?
when it came in, he was, in fact, most grant reviews, he doesn't get involved in. I do them all on my own. I mean, I have a lot of independence, but in this particular one, he was firewalled off from it, did not see the application, did not comment on the application. I believe he's aware that it's happening, that the grant.
Okay, good. So he was firewalled because he clearly has a conflict of interest in this case, right?
I don't know that he clearly has a conflict of interest, but I know that it has been raised in the past that his involvement in historical activities in the district makes him appear biased. So right. I firewalled him off, and I simply because it made more sense to do that from a transparency standpoint. And at some point, I'd like to address the comments on the red line because they aren't the same and the law has changed since then. So whenever you all want to hear that, I'm happy to provide that.
I'm not.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that a director has firewalled himself because I clearly think this is, just an example of OANC like giving so much trouble to the previous grant where people were just trying to serve food, but for some reason this one seems completely okay. Thank you, everyone.
And I just want to say I wasn't disagreeing, and I'm very well aware that the law changed. I just, for me, irrespective of the law changing or not, I just feel I, in good conscience, cannot give it to one organization when the other organization had to fight.
Well, the other organization didn't fight. We had several meetings with them. We told them they could make a simple change and the grant would be permissible, and they refused. So when we met with them the first time, they said they were going to be doing case studies. And we said, if you can do the case studies in the ANCs you're seeking funding from, that would make the grant permissible. Because at that time, the law required that, the law changed from that it had to primarily benefit an ANC. Now the law is it substantially benefit an ANC, and we promoted that change so that multiple ANCs could fund projects. But the applicants in the first meeting said they weren't sure, they wanted to see where it took them. And in the second meeting, they said no, that they could not make that commitment because, well, first they had never identified where they were going to do the case studies. And they would not do a case study in the ANC they were seeking funding from. And that was the big issue because without it being tied to a particular ANC. It was a citywide project, and under the previous law, and pretty much under this law, citywide projects are not permissible. There has to be some tie-in to the ANC that's funding it. And that has pretty much been the law in the district for a long time. So it was, you know, and we offered to work with them. We had, I know one meeting lasted well over an hour. And we had a second meeting with them. Actually, as of those meetings, I had not seen the application. The application had been sent to Dawn, who never gave it to the rest of us because she didn't do the grant reviews. But that's another story because that happened before I started. But and we also never saw applications specific to more than one ANC. So there were a lot of problems with that application, and a lot of them had to do with the applicant, not necessarily what they wanted to do, but in the sense that they would not commit to using the ANC money for something within that ANC was the big issue with that grant. The big difference with this project is there are going to be, the money is going to area-wide studies within that ANC. I mean, you guys don't have to fund it. I mean, my reviews don't make recommendations as to what decision you make. You know, we just look at the 6 factors, and it met the 6 factors. I certainly don't get into, we in terms of the duplication, we checked with Office of Planning to ensure there was no duplication, and we got a letter from OP to that effect. And we also, is it a project? Does it have a beginning and end? Is there a benefit tiable to the ANC? Are they an organization within the meaning of the statute?
Okay.
So,
Denise, thanks for that explanation. I want to say something, but Janelle, do you want to go first?
Yeah, because I kind of want to, again, pull on that thread of thought. Like, so for this application, this project, this is a project. We've already covered projects. If ANC3C wanted to fund the study specific to Cleveland Park, following the scope of whatever OP and HPO have ironed out here for our particular segment, using a consultant that we source, and say we're not funding this, is that permissible?
I'd have to see the application, possibly.
Okay.
I mean,
but that's a potential route that we could take and then work with you to get it permissible. Should the ANC3C decide, as we clearly put in a resolution, we thought this is a valuable study to do on historic districts. So I know that ANCs are allowed to hire consultants to do work like this. And if it's pulled out of this badge that the DC Preservation League is running, it's not duplicative of a service already being provided. But is the ANC then the applicant for our own money? Like,
it would be.
I guess we can make up our own policies and procedures at that point, because it's not defined by OANC and we're not going to wait for the guidance. So,
well, it is a direct expenditure. So because it is a direct expenditure for public purposes, it needs to follow a number of the public purpose guidelines.
Yeah,
as outlined in the statute.
That's all I know. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Thanks everyone. The undefined red line experience was frustrating. In the end, I thought it was a really good project, and I hope everyone did see it. I think it really advanced the discussion in our neighborhood. I'm a bit frustrated with this project and with the application, because I do think this is a really important issue. That historic preservation. I'm a big fan of historic. I love the landmark stuff that is done. I love living in a historic city and preserving what's great about it. But I'm also frustrated I observe that I feel like historic preservation is being weaponized. We can see this in the Chevy Chase community right now for exclusionary purposes. And I don't know how pervasive that is, and I also don't know how big the impact actually is. So it's a real open question to me about what the impact of historic districts and historic preservation is. And I would like the answer to that question, and our ANC would like that. Would like more information on it. I do think this project will provide more information, but I think because of its design, it sort of has a hurdle of skepticism to overcome, and so that's to me going to be frustrating about it because I really do want this study, and I want a quality study, and I'm willing to accept what a quality study is. I think it'll be a contribution not just to DC but to the national discussion around these issues. So kind of an important thing, but again, a little frustrated. A question for Rebecca, if you would, do you have is there anything like a advisory committee or sort of methods review function as part of the project? Is there a way to try to ensure that there are sort of standards or guidelines for how the analysis is done?
That is the data analysis team at the Office of Planning who is taking care of that.
Data analysis. Okay.
They're the ones who produce all the different data for the Office of Planning that they come up with. So they have been on the calls with the consultant and the director, and they've had questions about methodology. They've made comments about that. So.
Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a liaison between the consultants and OP.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder if there's an opportunity for any other public or discussions. Anyway, so anyway, I mean, I realize you're coming into a slightly hostile environment, Rebecca.
I fully expected it, to be quite honest. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I had no expectation that you all would fund this because we haven't had very many pleasant experiences with your ANC. So, and I understand the question about weaponization of historic preservation, but I think you're taking it out on the wrong group. So we've had a tremendous impact on this city as to how it looks and why people come here and want to live here. And I think that the comments that somehow that because we're managing a contract, that this is all going to be somehow farcical it's really just insulting, to be quite honest. And so I don't think we have much more to talk about. And I think you should just take it off your agenda. So.
Okay. Well, again, I want to say thanks for coming, and I appreciate
Thank
hearing
you.
about it. And I'm glad a study is being done, and I wish there's probably some forensics to do to figure out how to strengthen it, and also if we're going to do things like this in the future, how to improve them so that I mean, since ANC3C was one of the initiators of this effort, it's frustrating that it seems like we're unlikely to be supporting it in the end, and that's I mean, I think we want to or we want to have a project that we can support. So but I appreciate you coming here. I think that was you're doing public service by doing that, and I appreciate it. Denise, your hand is up. Are you still?
Oh, I know. I should have taken it down.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Colin, do you mind if I just make a comment?
Yes.
I just want to say that I appreciate you coming as well. My hesitation has nothing to do with the grant itself. For me personally, I feel like it was very similar in one way or another, and irrespective of if it's neighborhood based or city based. Like I said earlier, I live in all of Ward 3. I was in Cleveland Park 3 times today, so it's not like I'm bound by my SMD boundaries. But what I do not appreciate is if you really did not feel like this ANC was going to fund this grant, please don't waste my time.
Well, I appreciate you coming. I don't consider my time wasted by discussing it with you and considering it. So
I was giving you all the option to hear more about the project. So.
yes. Yeah, I appreciate that. Janelle, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate the project and hearing more about it. It's just the sole sourcing of it is not comforting. And that is where I'm taking issue. It's not writ large that, and Rebecca, we've talked, and you know, I appreciate historic preservation. I've seen you at the history stuff and nerd out. But like, it's just, the process should have been a little bit more transparent as to how the project came to fruition before it's this far down the line. And I think that lack of transparency becomes suspect in and of its own. And that's unfortunate, because I think this is a very valuable endeavor. And I again appreciate like your time in sharing more information on it.
And I think that you should take that up with the mayor and the council who chose not to fund this. So it would go differently had they funded it.
Who chose not to fund people's health insurance, so.
Yeah. And this was like a very small amount of money. So I find that unfortunate on their part too. So yeah, I'm happy to sign on to anything that you want to send regarding that too.
Okay, thank you all. Any final comments or questions on this one? Okay, thanks, everyone. We'll plan on, if the Preservation League wants to withdraw this application, you're welcome to, of course, but otherwise, we'll plan on taking up in September at our ANC, and in the meantime, we'll work on the applications and try to get a bit more information. Rebecca, I again appreciate you coming and explaining it. I do think that the study is quite interesting and could have a lot of value, and so and appreciate your initiative. I know you're not getting funding to do it, so you're raising the funding and putting your own resources into it. So that's really admirable. I think that's it for our agenda here, and so unless anyone has any other final comments, we'll close it off. We're a little over time. Denise, thank you also for coming and bringing OANC's insight. Appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. That was super helpful and better than email back and forths.
Yes. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.